Hi, I'm Coach Deidre. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about curveballs. Well, we're going to talk quite a bit about curveballs. This is when life just throws something at you didn't expect. And how do you deal with it? How do you handle it? I mean, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're hit with something that just leaves you a bit stunned? Like, what just happened? Where you thought you were suddenly falling off the map. You looked around and find yourself lost, disconnected, and wondering how you got here. I bet if you stopped and think about it, this has happened to you at least once in your life. Sometimes a diversion is a minor, quick adjustment and you're back on your way. And sometimes it's a significant change, perhaps even life-altering. The modern phrase seems to be, I didn't have that on my bingo card. It can be kind of entertaining when it is, sports or an unexpected political event or happening to a celebrity or someone you don't really know. But it's not as much fun when it's happening to you personally. No one likes the feeling of being hit with something they didn't see coming. What do you do when life throws you curveballs? Here are a few tips from both my NLP training and life experience. As we go through this advice, I will tell you a bit about my current curveball situation and examples of how I've used this advice to help me. Remember, everyone is different and will have different experiences when applying advice. Evaluate these suggestions based on your personal situation and determine if they may help you navigate life's curveball in a similar way they have helped me. I would suggest the first thing you do is recognize that whatever curveball you're dealing with, it may require some changes, whether it be quick or temporary or potential long term. A true life curveball usually requires changes. Coming to grips with changes being upon you is a good place to start. Accepting that changes may be coming, allowing yourself time and grace to fully embrace these new possibilities. And depending on the severity of the situation, it may even be more of a process than a one-time quick fix. It may take time to gather the full scope of information and understanding. So that fix or set of changes may be determined over time. So allow yourself time. Allow the process to take place. Our natural indication is going to be to rush it, to rush to fix it. You know, but immediate action may not always be possible. And when it's not, I suggest that you meditate, pray if you do so, and look for the next step, the next best step, rather than trying to change and fix the full situation. Instead of looking always toward the full situation from the start, focus on the next step. I call this the adjusting phase. You're adjusting to the idea that change is upon you, that things will have to change. And you begin to determine what that change will involve. It's a big adjustment in some cases. A very important tool that goes right after the adjusting phase, or sometime after the adjusting phase, is the reframing challenge. Okay, reframing requires you to take a step back from the middle of the situation and find a different way of looking at it, potentially a more positive way. Reframing allows you to loosen your grip on that problem. A metaphor I like to use is looking at a coin. Looking at the coin. At first, you are fully focused on the side of the coin that is right in front of you. You can see nothing else but the side of the coin that is right in front of you. Eventually, through adjusting and preparing to reframe, and eventually using reframing, you start to look at the other side of the coin. Reframing helps you bring into focus a different side of the problem or the solution. It allows you to look at it at a different angle. And notice this was not mentioned as a first step. Sometimes it's even later than the second step. Time and adjusting are likely going to be required before you are ready to reframe your situation. For me, this is easiest when talking to someone about my situation. Usually, when I talk to others, I don't want to be the negative Nancy or to sound like I'm feeling sorry for myself. So it comes more naturally to put out a positive spin on things. A reframe is a positive spin. However, this step helps me to find a reframe quicker and move closer to getting out of the pit caused by my curveball because I start to hear myself presenting a positive spin. A few weeks ago, I was telling a friend about my current curveball situation. I was expressing frustration over what I'm having difficulty doing. Listening to myself, I began to question the message I was conveying. I started to feel as if I was bringing them down. So I said, since I can't do this right now, perhaps I'm supposed to focus on this other thing. Maybe I need to teach myself more about this other thing. It was just a quick reframe on the fly, but it stuck with me. Perhaps I do need more of the other thing to perfect it a bit more, to change my focus. Maybe there are other lessons to learn in the situation I should look for. And trust me, I want to get all the lessons learned as quick as possible and hopefully move on from this. Next is the prioritization phase. Prioritizing requires you looking objectively at the truth of the situation and what needs to be done to make it better, to make it work, to move forward. Then prioritize those items. I know it's hard, but refrain from focusing on the whole ideal end state and the situation as a whole, and instead concentrate on the next best step to getting there. Looking at it as a group of steps and prioritizing the steps, putting them in order, will help you navigate the situation. And having everything in order will help you feel calmer and more in control. Also, if the curveball is limiting your resources in some way, you may also have to prioritize your resources. If it is a long-term situation, you may have to prioritize your time, energy, and money, your resources on a day-to-day basis to keep the momentum going forward and to keep you working toward that end state. Lastly is how to keep this momentum going. To keep moving forward is an important step. You can adjust, you can reframe, and you can prioritize like a pro. But if you don't actually take action to move forward, it's all for naught. There are so many cliches that can be thrown out here. A lot of cliches apply. So fight off the desire to bury your head in the sand, curl up and hide, ignore the facts in front of you, turn your back from reality. Can you think of any more cliches? There are so many that fit the situation. Go ahead and put them in the comments. I love a good cliche. But at this point, it's also important to attempt to stay connected to the people you'll prioritize in your life. So don't do those cliches. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't curl up. Stand up and reach out to the people you prioritize in your life. Avoid the desire to push them away. Taking it out, talking it out, is very helpful to you and the person connecting with you. Connections keep you from feeling alone in an unexpected situation. I would encourage you to reach out to as many of your connections as you possibly can for support. If you are in a prayer group, ask them to pray for you this time. Most of us do a lot for others, and it is okay, occasionally, to let others do something for you. Letting others help may inadvertently bring light on how impactful it is when you help others. If you're curious about my personal recent curveball, I will now tell you what happened along with how I applied this advice. This is the end of the general curveball advice and the beginning of my story. If you would like, you can end here and take the advice on adjusting and reframing and connecting and moving forward and apply it to your own life. If you'd like to hear more about how I applied it to my life, let's begin. It all started when I had a sinus headache and congestion since spring that I couldn't shake. It just kept coming back. I went to the doctor, was given antibiotics for a sinus infection in May, again in August, and September. In early October, I was scheduled to give a talk at a women's group, and I was really excited about this opportunity. I had been on antibiotics for over a week, felt it was okay to go. We were there the night before. I continued practicing and practicing my speech, and was quite prepared. We got up early the next morning, the morning of the event, to set up the table, intended to make it easier for me to speak to the ladies after and before the event, after and before my speech, and to potentially get some pre-sales for my upcoming book. My sinuses were much clearer. My nose was still running a bit, so I was a little concerned my nose would run while I had the podium. As the morning went on, my nose cleared and I was ready. I left the booth where I was sitting and moved to the back of the ballroom, conference room. It was one of those big, big conference rooms with a lot of tables set up, the kind that could be separated into several venues. But today we had the whole conference area. As I sat back, being mic'd and introduced, I was calm and ready. Tissue in my pocket, just in case my nose started to run, and a tablet with notes to make sure I did not skip anything. The walk to the podium seemed to be extra long and taxing. By the time I got there and took the remote, I noticed my hands were shaking. I was breathing really hard. Next, I noticed my heart rate was significantly high. I checked my emotions. I wasn't nervous or overexcited. I took a deep breath and started to talk. I was disturbingly breathy. The mismatch of my physical reaction and my mental state started to worry me. It was very hard to try to speak without breathing hard, and a strange sort of panic set in. I found myself concentrating on standing up, breathing, and controlling the shaking more than I was paying attention to what I was saying. I ended up slowing my pace, allowing myself to breathe slower, and I missed most of what I wanted to say and also went over my time right before lunch. That took about an extra 15 minutes, and I was devastated. It took almost a half hour for everything to settle back down and for me to have lunch and move on. I had only one book pre-sale, and it was all I could do to look upbeat and positive the rest of the day. Eventually, I reframed it, and I knew I would get a chance to perform it again. The next morning, we drove back to South Carolina from Tampa. My chest was tight, and I generally felt bad. I kept checking to make sure it wasn't a mental thing, and it wasn't. The next day, when we were back in South Carolina, I went to the doctor. She did a chest x-ray and determined I had pneumonia. I was given a different antibiotic and told to rest. Well, that didn't work either. So After about a week, I went back and they did a CT. It showed signs of interstitial lung disease. So I was given steroids and sent off to a pulmonologist. Of course, it would be months before they could see me. I was assured it wasn't bacterial, virus, or any type of contagious pneumonia. However, I could not walk from the bed to the bathroom and back without being out of breath. Daily chores and moving around were a struggle. With all going on around me, my husband started getting run down. It was somewhere in mid-November, and he seemed to have a serious sinus infection. So he went to the doctor. They did a lung x-ray and said no pneumonia. Yay! I didn't get him sick. He was put on an antibiotic for the sinus infection. Now, both of us are distracted, very low on energy. The house was not being kept up as it should, and it seemed near impossible to keep up with anything work-related. It just felt like a total downward spiral. When I was able to get back to my doctor, I begged her to help me get to the pulmonologist sooner. I felt like I just couldn't take it anymore. She was successful. In December, they took 12 vials of blood trying to track down the cause and narrow a diagnosis. A lot of my energy was put into understanding each lab. I was watching the lab results diligently over the next few weeks. Still, I could do very little before needing rest. And now I was even more distracted watching the blood work and trying to figure this out. Nothing showed up in the blood work. I had no idea where it came from. So next step was to check and see if it was a heart issue. They did an echo. My heart was good, thank God. But they still didn't know the reason why I was having an issue. But here's the real curveball. The following week, my husband had an incident and went to the ER and then to the hospital for 7 days. I was spending as much time there with him as possible, bringing food and other items from home. It was long walks from the parking lot, pulling or carrying supplies. Here's the reframe. I needed a change of focus. At this point, it did not matter about me. It is so important when someone is in the hospital to have someone else with them to be their advocate, as they are weak and tired and may not be able to take in all that is going on. And to remember what the doctor said, because sometimes the doctors forget, the nurses forget. Someone has to remember. So, after 3 days at the hospital, the weather hit. Snow and ice. No safe way for me to get there for 2 days. The curveballs just kept coming. Here's my reframe. I personally needed a rest. I needed to use technology to still be helpful, and I could do it. I was on speakerphone when the doctors came in and could help make sure things were done as the doctor ordered. And I knew what was going on, and I was able to listen and help. Luckily, soon after the snowstorm, they sent my husband home. We have adjusted to our physical limitations and found a way to move forward. And we're working on our mindset on a regular basis and continue to change. It's not easy, but my biggest reframe has been that since it's difficult to talk, it's hard to breathe, that I need to listen more. And so I have changed my focus on listening. I'm still working with a pulmonologist to figure out why this has happened and what it may be. But I've moved past that a bit and changed my focus on how to deal with it. I no longer panic or get all upset when I can't do everything I need to do or think I have to do in the moment. That has helped me so much that I do more, rest more, and talk less. I hope these reframes have helped you as much as they have helped me. Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you the next time. Our next subject is going to be the difference between empathy and compassion.